One, two, three.
Hello, and welcome to Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And my name is Dave, and you guys know that I love addiction, drugs, and recovery memes. And one of my favorite meme makers happens to be Nick from Dark Side of the Spoon, and he posted some shit, and I was like, dude, and he liked it, and I reposted it, and he was like, dude, I should take you to dinner. And I was like, dude, why don't you just come on the fucking show? And here he is, Nick from Dark Side of the Spoon. What's happening?
Yeah, what's up, man? And it was funny because I tried to take you out to dinner, and you said you had too much sober time for that to work on you. So,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. It's gonna take a lot more than some kind of dinner.
I thought you were a
Invitation.
newcomer. I'm sorry, man.
I'm looking to be
Thank
13th stepped on a daily basis, so I appreciate the offer. I really do.
you. So thanks so much for having me.
Oh, dude, it's a pleasure. I love your shit, and your first page was toppled through shenanigans of Instagram, which is just a horrible thing.
Yeah, I got to Instagram pretty late too. I mean, my Facebook had like 98,000 followers before that got zucked. Oh, so what can you do, man? I mean,
What does being zucked really mean?
well, it means that you violated community standards, and then you it's taken away from you. Like they do a review, and whoever in the ivory tower and in the tech world, makes a judgment call. There's no due process. I can't like retain a lawyer. I can't, have there's no. It's just whatever someone's feeling that day, I guess. And that day was my time to die, I guess.
What
You
was the
know,
meme that went over the line?
oh my God. I don't know, man. But it seems like they always come in threes. Like it seemed like when you would get reported, it would always be like multiple at a time. So obviously it's like the same person, but there's always things where it's automatically reported. So if you put words like anything to do with suicide or certain slogans about religious slogans, you know what I mean? Like the algorithm will already scan it, so you can't. So I'd say 50% of it is just automatically scanned from my error, like being too not thinking enough, and the other 50% is probably just people reporting it.
That's scary, but what do you mean not thinking enough? Be specific. What do you mean by that?
Well, like if I'm trying to make a meme, I'm just like impulsive. So I have this idea in my head. I'm just like I can't relax until I get it out. And sometimes it's I'll say suicide or kill yourself or something, and I'm not thinking about like the consequences, as we're kind of wired to do.
Sure.
And it has consequences. So you do that frequently enough, you can, and you have a big following. The bigger the following you have, the more high risk it is for reports or the more exposure you have. If you have a few followers, it's,
Nobody
simple.
cares.
Like nobody cares. Right.
Well,
So that was,
the fucked up thing is how brave new world it really is. It's like when you deal with something like Facebook or Instagram or iTunes or YouTube, it's really you go down into that matrix brave new world where there's an algorithm that's policing you, and once they suck you out, you can't really get yourself back in unless you start over. We had that happen on iTunes where iTunes took us down for like months. Dopey was off of iTunes, and I'm like, I couldn't talk to anybody, like there was
wow.
nothing I could do. It was like total powerlessness. Or like
Right.
YouTube, they demonetized all of our
Oh,
videos, and our videos like had, they have all these crazy videos, and they demonetized ours, and like
what
nothing you
was
could
your
do.
crime? What was your
They didn't.
crime?
They said we were glorifying drugs.
And it's funny because we're kind of doing the opposite, right? I mean, I hope if you look at my page and see my memes, you're not like, that looks cool. Like, no, when we're stupid people. We're like children. We're in this cycle of insanity. And there's nothing that like shows what's the word I'm looking for that makes it look cool. At least my memes. I try not to make them look cool. Like I want to make being an active heroin user like I was for 9 years look as stupid as possible because I was.
How did
But
you
it's funny.
what I agree. I mean, the whole point of Dopey is to be able to laugh at the shit we did without having to do the shit again, and having a community based on the dumb shit that we did, and how also the duality of being a crazy drug addict and then trying
Yeah.
to live some sort of pseudo spiritual life, and how funny it is that the same person, and that's where most of the memes come from, like you're the same
Yeah.
person that did X, Y, and Z, and now you're supposed to do A, B, and C or whatever. When did
Yeah.
you start using? How did you become a heroin addict for 9 years?
So I'm 33. I turned 34 in September. I started using about in when I was 17. OxyContin and heroin, and I'm from a place that's right in between Washington D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland. So me and my friends started going to Baltimore. It was cheaper, and then I always sold any drug that I ever did or tried to. I was the worst dealer ever. Um, well, for myself, I was the number one customer, but yeah, like I used to think like I got into it early, before like this opioid epidemic where all these drug task force were created and there was all these, people that were dying. I mean, I couldn't remember so many people dying when I was selling actual heroin. I don't even know what they got now, but I started because, through the OxyContin, similar story. I tried a painkiller and then they're cheaper to do this.
Were you
And I just
smoking
thought,
bud first? Were you smoking weed
oh
and
yeah, yeah,
then
yeah, yeah,
were
yeah.
you like a
Smoked from
stoner?
Yeah, stoner. And that's the thing. Like when I started using marijuana and hallucinogens, like my whole personality switched overnight. And I say this when I lead meetings. Like in eighth grade, I was reading Holes by Shia LaBeouf and like Harry Potter. And then the second
Wait,
I
hold on.
read
Did
like
Shia
some,
LaBeouf write Holes?
no, no, but they made a movie with him later.
Yes. Okay.
I
Just
don't
keep
think he
going.
can write,
I
but
think he can
there's
probably write, but I was going to be really impressed if he not only starred in Holes, but he had written it before he starred in it.
Yeah, fuck. I mean, for all I know, Shia LaBeouf probably listens to this podcast, but I always use this lead in a lead for all I know, right? But I was reading, just kids' books, and then like the second I tried weed, man, I was reading all the beat writers and like like singing Howl, reading Howl out my window, while chain smoking cigarettes in my
Yeah.
mom's yard, thinking I'm so cool. There was this whole
Yeah.
personality change, and that personality change and to what is a big theme of mine, in terms of like my memes and stuff. That culture changed overnight. Of now I'm like trying to understand the beat writers, and I was always a jazz musician, and I was
What'd you
a
play?
jazz drummer,
Oh, drums.
drums.
Nice.
So I used to study under like a really cool teacher, and I had all these opportunities. But meaning I was like musical skateboarder, um, and so it wasn't that far off for me to delve into psychedelics. And then the drugs got harder, the consequences got worse. But I love that personality change. Like I embraced it. Like I was that guy, in high school and everything. So that's very dangerous. That for that just to be somebody you're not, that lifestyle that has possibly deadly consequences, and how us adolescents will just switch and not really understand it is
I
a
like
huge
this.
interest.
I like this because I'm the same. I'm very similar, and like not everybody's like that. You know what I mean? Like that's not like the
Right.
guy who I started the podcast with, Chris. He didn't know the difference between, Jack Kerouac and whoever. He didn't know the culture, the old school culture. He just wanted oblivion. What was the first thing that like turned you on to like that sort of counterculture thing?
It was probably like reading about the LSD experiments, and LSD, and hearing it from my older friends, about how there was this whole, you know there's this whole cultural revolution, and revolutions and teenage angst and rebelling are I think it's because our testosterone, as developing adolescents. I think that's a little something to do with it, also to identifying who we are. And there's a little bit of a political movement with it too, that just like downloaded in my head too. I and it's funny because now, like looking back and having a sober mind to appreciate the art of the counterculture, right? Which is, you can't argue with, and all the great music and culture that came out of it, looking at the bad side too, and say like, dude, William S. Burroughs, I'm sorry to say this, but he was a chomo. And it's
What is
like, I said
chomo?
it.
What's
He's
chomo?
like he's a child molester,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
know, so, but like,
How do I not
you
know what
know,
chomo is? That's a thing now, right? Chomo.
have you been to jail?
Not
It's a,
really. Just a night here
well,
and there.
yeah, well, I did a year in jail and I picked up probably a lot of slang, you know.
All right, that's solid
I was like,
chomo.
I just went in there. I was like, where's the chomos at? Fuck them, right? Yeah, like I'm cool. Like,
I'm
what are
not a
you here for? I'm
chomo.
like,
I'm a
yeah,
child,
yeah,
not a chomo.
yeah. Yeah. Where the fuck those chomos? I'm trying to like get up the hierarchy as quickly as possible. You know, like
I get it.
who we smashing, dog?
No, did you smash anybody in jail?
No,
There was not
no,
no chomos to be smashed by you.
no, not no,
See, when I
no.
was a kid,
I was put in the drug pod, like the older guys, like non-violent, you know, and like drug addicts.
what
So
were
it was
you
like a
about to say
reunion.
about Burroughs, though?
But so I didn't have the cognitive abilities as an adolescent to like really examine the good and the bad and understand, like, have experience with culture and what my morals are, or what I think society is, or my real political beliefs, and apply that to a culture that I don't understand. I just fell in like, okay, Burroughs is a god, right? Allen Ginsberg is just this amazing guy. Jack Kerouac was a amazing writer, but I didn't have any what's it called, like I couldn't critique anything because I didn't understand too much. So if I'm reading William S. Burroughs Junkie and I'm like, this is me. I don't even know who I am, mind you. This is me,
Right.
like, you know.
It's imprinting
Um,
itself on your
it's
psyche.
yeah, and you know, that kind of phenomenon is apparent in from my experience in, like, you know, people who grow up without fathers and join gangs. Like anything can happen during that, and what is it that is taking place is like a big curiosity and theme to me because it impacted me, right? But I joke and say, well, like, and plus, William S. Burroughs, his son was a way better writer. And I
You think
love
so?
Kentucky. Yeah, Kentucky Ham was like, I'll read that book now and I'll feel like I'm on like Adderall. Like he's such a better writer. And anyway, so
Billy Burroughs.
yeah, Billy Burroughs.
He's a
Yeah,
sad character, though, Billy Burroughs.
yeah. Well, and that he's a victim of his dad. You know, like, what a beautiful, like, bright, smart, funny person that, like, his dad, you know, just completely he was too busy going to, like, what, Somalia or whatever, and chilling with manservants or boy servants. You know, he didn't give a shit about his son. But Burroughs is a god, and you can't argue that to any fans of the counterculture, and that's bullshit. Fuck Burroughs and read
Well,
Kentucky Ham.
I never read Kentucky Ham. What was the book he wrote? The Speed book. I
Yeah,
think you.
it's two books in one. It's Kentucky Ham, and I forgot the name of the other one, but read it.
All right, I'll read him. What the hell? He's dead. You know, he died a very sad, sad death. And he
Yep.
had a very, very sad life, and he was neglected. I think that, you know, obviously you're not Billy Burroughs, and I'm not Billy Burroughs. Like, I came from a total middle class Jewish household in New York City, and I felt kind of like, and I was in a school where I had friends, and I was a part of it. I like had the addict shit in me, but it was like managed with my friends and my little community. And once I like got into the Beatles, and I remember I would like read about the Beatles, and I'd be like, oh, they were on drugs, and then I would see weird little
Yeah.
biopics here and there. But it was like when I saw that movie, The Doors, it changed
Yep.
me. Like, for whatever
Yeah.
reason, I was a kid. I was in high school. I remember I saw it on 8th Street. I left the movie theater, and I was like, I want to do drugs. Like, I was like,
Right. That it was the Oliver Stone one, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I was, when I mentioned being a jazz musician, I was holding back of being like, but the Doors, growing my hair out, Jim Morrison, you know, him being a poet more than a singer, all that was a big influence on me too. So you saying that made me feel comfortable with saying that the Doors were also musically you know, like the Beatles for you, the Doors were a big musical incentive in my debauchery later on.
But it's
So
funny because, like,
see,
when you talk about like being imprinted on, Like I was this kid. Like when you read Burroughs and you're like, I'm that guy. I'm like,
Yeah, you're not.
I'm the straightest fucking guy in that theater, and I see,
Yeah.
this fake Jim Morrison is like, I don't change my pants and I don't wash my hair. I'm like, I'm gonna stop washing
That's
my
me.
pants, stop
Yeah,
washing
that's me.
my hair. Exactly,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
me. It's like that's me. No, that's yeah, I can relate, man.
So when did it go from psychedelics and weed to how did you when did you find yourself a fucking heroin addict?
Oh man, it's one of the pretty quickly, man. Because of the jazz musicians and being a little historical person myself, and like Bird and all the greats were on the Skag, and it was the Oxys, and probably like 2006, seven, and by 2007, I was fully addicted to heroin, not even injecting it at that point. For about a year, I snorted it, and then I started selling it. Then I was the worst phlebotomist ever for a while, and
Me too. Me
you
too.
know,
We have a lot in common,
my
I think. We have a
oh,
lot
we
in
do,
common.
man.
Yeah.
Except for I'm Russian Orthodox,
Well, it's
but
very close. I'm sure there's like I'm
yeah,
sure
it's
your people beat our people back in the day at some point. I'm sure we were oppressed by you at some point back in history.
right.
Um
Yeah, so
when
there's that connection, but it went from what I can remember. If you just look at it on a timeline from 15, smoking weed and taking. Well, I used to grow mushrooms every weekend. Well, I used to grow mushrooms at 15, so I had the attitude of like I would joke with my mom like, Mom, if I liked wine, you'd be fucking finding grape plants in the backyard, right? She would find all my
how'd you grow
fruiting.
mushrooms?
Well, in 2004, there was the internet still, cable. I mean, I
I've heard of
literally
it.
was obsessed. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's one of those things where addiction, and why I love the room's definition of addiction, NA, is like the obsession. And that kind of quantifies like a vast experience of my relationship with drugs and things outside of myself. The obsession. So an example of that is I dropped out of school and I was just reading about the PF tech, of how to inoculate using spores, order them for months. And I was like powerless. Like I couldn't stop
Okay.
reading about it. And and I remember my mom one time found my fruiting terrarium on my desk, um, and she was like, "What the hell is that?" And I was like, "Mom, it's a science project." And she was like, "You haven't been to school in months. Like, what do you mean?" Like,
Now hold on.
I was like,
Before you say another word, break it down. The fruiting terrarium. We need to know.
"Well, all right,
I need to know.
yeah." Well, all right. So there's two to grow magic mushrooms. Like there's the where the jars get colonized, the colonization, and the fruiting. So same like with marijuana, like you grow the weed and then it has to bud or fruit. And it's been so long, and I'm anti magic mushrooms. So if any of your listeners are like, that's not correct, the PF Tech is stupid. Well, the PF Tech is like a way of what food nutrition you use. So you use like bird seed, vermiculite, and water, and then you sterilize it. Like looking like a crackhead using your mom's stove at 15 while she's asleep on the couch 2 rooms away, just boiling these jars of, and then you inoculate it. So then they colonize. They have to like basically in the dark for I think it was 30 days, and they turn white, like it fills with fungus, and then you pop them out in a fruiting chamber, which it's now humid. So the humidity needs to be like 99%, and then the mushrooms grow out. So my mom
Awesome.
found them when the mushrooms were growing out because it's easier to hide colonizing jars that don't need light anyway. And it was always the as an adolescent boy and under their parents' rules, that was the risky time, was the fruiting process. So she found them and she was like, "What the fuck is this?" And I was like, "It's a science project." She's like, "You haven't been to school in like half a year," and she
Wait,
was
where were
right
you?
because
How
I
were you
was
out of school for half a year at 15?
well because well it was 16, if I'm being exact. It was 16 because after when you're a junior or something, you have a job and you only have a half day schedule anyway. So
Right.
what I'd do is I'd go to work at like noon and then come back at 5, but from 9 to noon, I wasn't going to class, you know.
And were you
I was
eating a
just in
lot of
my
the
room.
mushrooms, or were you just selling them?
No, I wasn't really selling them. I mean, we would just, me and my friends would take them, as much as every weekend. So
And
that
you
was like
play
the
jazz
obsession.
music and play rock
Yeah,
and roll?
I was a I was reading, studying on a Mel Bay's syncopation cookbook, which any of the
Nice.
drummers
Oh yeah.
who would know what I'm talking about, and so that was like my life, drum lessons, playing music with my friends, and tripping balls every single weekend. Or that was the goal. That was the obsession. And then at some point, it got into the pills, where Xanax and alprazolam and pharmaceuticals, because that was always like taboo. You ask any like wook, like that's like, bro, big pharma, like not cool. Like that was sort of the line for one point. And of course, even drinking alcohol was the line. I didn't even drink alcohol like until about 17. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to do a nice long Freudian free association therapy session to see what exactly happened at 17. But there was no boundaries anymore. And I started selling, you know, um, club drugs and ecstasy, cocaine. It was just, and then for me, the drug of choice became opiates, and then
Well, it's
once
like
that happened,
once you start and you have an education and you're a musician and you're a music fan, you go down the path and you see everything is open, fair game. And it's like, okay, if I really want to be
exactly.
this, then I'm going to be this. How wookish were you in your youth?
Well, my hygiene was pretty wookish,
Okay.
but I always had a job. Like I was basically a junior loan counselor at a mortgage company at 16 to 20. And
Wow.
and and I remember eventually they fired me for obvious reasons, and they were like, "Nick, we will pray for you." And I cried. I was like, "I need this. I need this money." I basically broke down and cried. But anyway, yeah. My hygiene was pretty wokish, but my political beliefs weren't so wokish. I was always like a more of a uh, libertarian. I didn't go full on. You know,
Wooks
uh,
can be that can be I mean that can be a very hippie thing, libertarian, like fucking what is it, homesteading and shit, all that. There's a lot of good libertarian homesteading ideas in the hippie world. And the Wook, I never
well,
knew what Wook was. I had this guitar player Riley Walker on. I saw memes with Wooks, and I just assumed that because Wook sounded like Wookiees and hippies looked kind of like Chewbacca, that a Wook was obviously a hippie. But it took me like
well,
a leap in my mind. Where did it come
well.
from, the Wook thing?
They weren't called that back then because it was kind of before dubstep. I think that's a phrase associated with dubstep music and
Ah,
electronic. But I'll give you an example. I'll give you a way I categorize politics, especially for addicts and alcoholics. It's like if it was my stash, I was a fucking like a capitalist Tory party. But if it was your stash, I was communist at that point.
what's Tory?
Like the British Tory party, like the Whig party, where
Okay, thank you. I'm not as educated. I think I'm a little undereducated in
no,
this
no, it's
conversation, but
kind.
I'm with you.
Well, it's
Fruiting
no, no,
chambers,
no,
Tory parties, you're fucking
no.
right there. I'm with you.
Well, no, it's one of those things where like I always liked history, I always liked reading, I always liked culture, right? That was kind of like a hobby, even when I was selling drugs and on methadone in my pajamas all day, not showering. I always like watched YouTube, right? And I can
You're like a
gauge
smarter, much less Jewish version of me, I think. But keep going, please.
yeah. I mean, so I
Younger,
always
more
I,
successful.
well, the sad part about all this is like I loved people and talking to people and learning, and the addiction kind of shrinked my world and my place in it, and my hopes of ever having a place in it. Like like I'm sure, like for yourself, like you have so many followers and people who connect to your message and your content that you're putting out. Like I kind of feel that way sometimes. Like I talk to people all over the world, and my world is so like my wildest dreams. Like for 7-8 years ago, I was literally in a trap house, you know, um, in my pajamas. I had a cricket phone. People would be like, "What's a meme?" You think I was using my data to go on? So Hell no, I had a cricket phone. No, I
What
was
is a
like, I'd
cricket
go to
phone? What's a cricket
like
phone?
it's like a trap phone. Like, you load minutes on it,
Right,
no
right, right, right.
data,
What do they call
cracked
that?
screen.
The burner. Is that a burner?
The Yeah, it was a burner. Burner sounds more cool though. Like I wasn't that, I wasn't like James Bond out there. I was,
No, I want to get to the point because like I just read Brandon Novak's second book, The Streets of Baltimore, and I'm like
yep.
I've watched The Wire so many times in every state of high, sober, sick, withdrawal, methadone. I watched that show rain or shine. Like I might as well have been there, but you were actually there. So please break
Yeah.
down the truth behind Baltimore as a young white addict.
No, thanks, and shout out to Brandon Novak. He came on my radio show. I used to actually do. I was a guest of a WBCM Baltimore 680 radio show for
Nice.
social workers, and I was like the junkie humor guy,
Nice.
But Brandon Novak came on my show, and I talked to him a lot, and I sent him a shirt. And shout out to Brandon. Yeah, Baltimore. I would go into the county. I had the same drug dealer for 9 years. He's currently in the federal system, and we kind of grew together. When I first started getting him, like buying grams from him, then I started getting like 10 grams a day, and I saw his like rise. You know what I mean? And it's funny because I never actually knew his real name, and of course I won't say his real name, but I just thought his name was Dan. Okay, but I remember copping next to another guy with like West Virginia plates, and they called him Black. So he had
Right.
like multiple names for different people, which I think is the very smart thing to do.
Yes.
But like, it's bad when like you think like this plug in Baltimore is like your best friend. Like, I'd like be driving back, like talking to my friends. Yeah, did you see what he said? Yeah, we're so tight. Like, he even threw an extra, and he didn't even care about it because I give him like I'm his slave, and I give him like a couple
Those are
thousand
the
dollars a
best.
day.
Those
Yeah, and,
relationships are
and
the
just
best,
just
right?
just how you idolize like this thing, and in some ways they're great people, right? In some ways, like they're not like this typical where I would talk to this guy more than my parents, more than any of my closest friends before addiction, and just how like that relationship is the most important thing. So if he told me to meet him wherever in the city, I was doing it. I was complaining the whole time, but I was there. If he told me to stand in
How
the
did you
corner,
meet the mythical Dan slash Black?
through it's through other people. I think somebody who was selling, like this white dude, was selling drugs closer to the suburbs, and he used my phone. I remember this. He used my phone,
Ah, and you had the
and
number
I
once.
was like,
Yes.
yo, I don't need him anymore.
Yeah, you just sold your own ticket out of my fucking life. Now you're my
Yeah,
backup. Thank you for hooking me up. You're officially the backup. That's
and that's
great.
how it is, though. That's how it is, though.
That's how it is.
That's how it is. And so I would go to the city every few days. Uh, he was arrested in 2014, and I was seeing him probably since 2007 in this huge indictment from the FBI. And apparently like drones were being, the FBI was using drones to follow him. And
That's how you
it's
know it's
just,
serious. When they're using drones, you know nobody's fucking playing. Robots are on the
yes.
case.
And this was what, 8 years ago. So imagine like what they're doing right now. You all want to like mess around and sell fentanyl, or use it, or I mean, I just can't imagine what the risk now of that lifestyle, other than of course, because I remember my plug told me this one time. He was like, if it's cut with anything but morphine, it's scramble, dog. It's scramble. And so he was very proud that he would press um, his heroin, and he would only cut it with morphine. And there was this deal where
That's like artisanal heroin or something. You know what I mean? It's like
it's
if the
well,
morphine's the cut,
yeah,
that's why is that why Baltimore is like so lauded as like the greatest place to
well,
be a heroin addict?
I guess because it's a huge intergenerational problem, which The Wire touches on. So I think every morning there's like 80,000 active opiate addicts in Baltimore that wake up. Like
Right.
they open their eyes and there's 80,000 people, and it's like intergenerational. Like their dad, their mom, their grandfather. It's
Right.
that ingrained, and so there's raw or there's like scramble, and I would never get scramble. I would just get. But it was funny because he was trying to like help me in a way. He was like, "Look, get to 100 grams, and I'll give you 20 free grams of morphine to cut it yourself." And like me and my redneck friends who like make presses and like are good with their hands, like I wasn't. I was a musician. But we would give him things to like press his stuff, and like we had this really great relationship. um, and I remember one time like I would trade him guns, like I would and I remember one time I was like, well, there was this whole thing that's touched on and We Own the City, which is a new thing by David Simon that's just been released. So for a while, if you turned in a gun, you could get somebody out on a drug offense. So my plug was like taking guns from everywhere. It didn't matter if it worked, if it was rusty. He had this collection of guns. So if one of his runners got arrested, he could just get him out on bond. It
Amazing.
was like guns for bond or something. And,
Yes.
so it was like, our, old guns, rusty guns, whatever, he would take it. Um, so it was just a mess. And I didn't like it. I hated doing what I had to do. I hated going to Baltimore. It's not like the funnest, most exciting place. I mean, there's a
Was it
cool music
scary?
scene. Yeah, I was scared all the time, but when you're numb, I had no fear. I mean, I couldn't imagine you being in New York. Every time I go there, I'm overwhelmed. I was just up there, like we talked like a month ago, and yeah, it's the same thing everywhere, right? I was scared though, but it was a survival. I had to do it. There was no, it was going to happen.
Was
So
there was
it's
there a
just
little was there a little adventure? Like was I mean like for me, like yeah, I would be scared. When I got older and I was still copping, like I was like, I'm not going. Like you gotta come to me. I had money. I was like, just come to me until
right.
I would go and then I would get busted. And like I was so fearful of the random fucking fuck up. In LA I would go every day because I was broke and it was like it reminded me of what Baltimore was supposedly in my head, LA, because it was open air. It was like really out in the open. How accurate? I mean, I don't think I've ever even been to Baltimore. I think I've driven through it. How accurate was The Wire? Like, are there the low rises? Like, does that
Well,
exist?
well, I can't comment too much because I didn't go to the city. He would meet me in the county, and we would
Okay.
just window to window hand off.
Okay.
Because he would always mention, like, although he's from the inner city, he was like, I'm not exempt from other people like who were jealous of him, or so I'm sure there's many people who are listening who are like, who would just wake up, go to Baltimore, get scramble from cold copying, and they really know the ins and outs dealing with the police.
Sure.
But I've heard from those people that is very, very accurate, the depiction, especially in the whole 90s and early 2000s. It was exactly like that. And there's a lot of true stories of real characters. And so I can't really, that wasn't really my scene, although I was there. But I'll,
You were
I'll
like
tell you one.
benefiting. You were benefiting from
Yeah,
the
I,
scene.
I was going to the county. So I don't want to. I'm not going to act like I was like cold calling.
You weren't
But
copying
I had
from
I had
Bubbles.
I
Bubbles
had
wasn't your
no.
middleman one day.
I probably was Bubbles for the people in
Right.
in
Right.
Montgomery County.
I love
I
that. That's
was
so
no,
yes.
for real. I probably was the Bubbles. But I'll tell you one story. Like, and in the 8 years, not really much craziness happened from copying too much. But there was this one time where I bought like 10 grams. I took a friend of mine who's like a computer programmer. He dabbled by snorting heroin on the weekends. He's just a dabbler. He worked for a contractor for Alphabet Agency. I've known him since high school. He would give me a ride, and so we he drove me to re-up, and then he snorted some, and we were in this shopping center, and I was in the front seat, he was in the driving seat, and he basically turned blue. So I'm like, fuck. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to breathe for him. This is before the Narcan safe space or safe act or whatever. So I start like getting on top of him and giving him CPR, and I pull his seat back, and I start breathing for him, and out of the store, 3 cars away from us is the front of the building of the shopping center, is a police officer just walking out, just like looking around, just like, hey, and he's talking to somebody sweeping the thing. So every
Right.
time that cop looked in our direction, I stopped giving him CPR because the car was shaking.
Oh my God.
And so like I had this choice of either like let him die in front of me. Yeah. And so low be it, man. Luckily, the cop ended up walking, facing his back to me and talking to the guy. And so I was able to like, breathe for him for about 20, 30 minutes till he came to. But that was probably the most
So he
scariest,
fell out and you
risky.
successfully gave him CPR as he's dying. And if the cop looked your way, you might have
He
had
would
to
see
let
it.
him
Yeah.
die.
Right. I mean, well, he would see, I wouldn't want him seeing a car just shaking because it's either
Right.
like that or you'd have to play it off as a sexual act, which
Right.
I was probably prepared to do
Sure. Sure. I mean, that's
to get off.
crazy though. Cause like, I mean, that's a scary moment. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like I would, whenever I was in situations like that, like, I don't know, you had 10 grams on you though.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
needles and money. And
Yeah. It would have been
I
terrible.
mean, I would have put the 10 grams, where, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Sure. I know where.
Which I didn't, do you?
I've never had to put it there, but I can imagine where you had to put it. Absolutely. I've heard stories. I just read Brandon Novak's book. He's constantly putting it you know where. That's all he did. It was all the time. He's putting it you know where. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, like
smart guy.
I don't know. Like I don't know if how much dope my asshole would accept. Like I don't know. Like I don't know. Like I don't think I ever had that much. Like when I had it, and I had a lot of it,
Well,
it wasn't gonna fit in my ass. It was like fucking bundles of wax paper. How much of that can you
oh yeah.
stick in your ass?
Well, like mine looked like, like a roll of quarters. You know what I mean?
Well, that seems like
So
it's designed for it. How
yeah.
much stuff have you stuck in your ass? Let's just get this out of the way. How much stuff have you stuck in your ass in your times?
Um,
A lot.
who knows, man? Well,
Would you
anytime I
lick
got
it?
pulled
Would you
up,
use saliva as lubricant? What would you use?
nah, man, my tears of fear, my
Yeah.
fearful tears would be the lubricant.
Fearful tears. That's poetic. I like
I mean,
that.
well, basically, when you're selling drugs, you get pulled over, you're driving without a license. It's going there. Period. I mean, I probably would have gotten clean a decade ago if I didn't do that. A decade earlier, if I would have had some consequences. But all the real ones out there will know what I'm talking about.
Well, I feel like
Yeah.
you're accusing me of not being a real one right now. This is hurting my feelings.
Well, it sounds like you had a license though, and like a place to live,
Yeah, I think that if I
and
hadn't
definitely
if I
you might
hadn't
have
had
had
a
some.
place, I don't know that if I could how long I could have stayed on heroin if I didn't even have cable. Like I just don't know it would have worked for me. Like I
Well,
just what
it's fun. It's funny you mentioned that because when we didn't have cable, but we Obama had that policy where when he first got elected in '08, I was fully strung out by then. I remember watching the inauguration ceremony, shooting coke and heroin, and he put this thing out where like free cable, where if you buy a TV, it has that antenna, and it's like a federal zapped cable where it's like only 40 channels. But I remember so many times watching WETA UK and all the British shows. It was like, PBS, WETA, but there's WTA UK. And I remember just watching like Bally Kiss Angel and EastEnders and like uh, never thinking that I'd one day like be able to go to England or meet anybody from England. And, this September I was there for almost a month. I went to a couple meetings out there. Shout out to Brutal Recovery.
oh
She has
yeah,
a big page. I met with her. She actually took me
nice.
to a meeting on my clean date. So
Oh
it's September
beautiful.
7th. So she's like, come to a meeting with me. But things like that. But I remember that was my channel, man. So I didn't even need cable. Okay. I just needed my Cricket trap phone. Okay. And WETA. And I was happy.
I had like one stretch where I lived in a garage and I had like my girlfriend come rescue me and she like put me up for 8 years. Like I didn't work a day. I like was on the
See,
couch. I like was
see,
just
that's
eating
what,
ice cream sandwiches all day on methadone. But it wasn't good. It wasn't a good it
right.
wasn't good.
No wonder you didn't need to put drugs up there, man. She would have done
No,
it for you. You had
I,
her. She would have.
nothing.
You would have just snapped your fingers, and she would have been like, "I got it, honey. Anything to keep you loving me, right?"
I don't know. It was like, but it's like, it prolonged the misery, right? I mean, I was just talking to somebody about this. It prolonged the misery. But
Yeah,
my story
yeah,
is, I've told my story ad nauseum. I want to know what the fuck happened to you. What
right,
happened to you? So, like, you get away with it, that your friend lives, you don't get busted. That's great.
yeah. Um, just more consequences. At one point we had a computer hacker living with us. Anybody can look this guy up. His name's Christopher Schroebel. He passed away. He was a defendant of like Gorilla Black, the rapper with the credit card scams. He got my house raided by the Secret Service.
Hold on, let me
That
ask
was
you
not,
something really quickly. Do you think less of me because I didn't stick it up my butt? Just, I want to be clear. Do you not consider me a real one because I never did that?
no, you're definitely a real one, man.
Okay, thank you. I felt bad for it.
You're
I was
you're
worried. Now
def
let's get back to Gorilla Black. I'm sorry. I had a
yes.
self-centered moment. Self-centered fear was running me for a
Nah,
second.
man, you're definitely a real one. So there was in like 2012, there was a lot of consequences. There's this kid who's like 19. He was buying a lot. He had a credit card, dark web, whatever. I just knew he bought 10 grams wholesale for me a day, which I could eat off. And I just said, move in with me instead of me driving 3 hours every
Nice.
day. You know. And 9 months later, we get raided. His name's Christopher Schroebel, and he just passed away. He just got released from federal. He did his whole time. He went in a young kid computer hacker, and he came out like an ex um, Aryan Brotherhood, like
Wow.
just totally different beat up person who passed away. He didn't even die of overdose. He was poisoned. He was so in Baltimore. One thing I have beef with is they have contracts with the federal government for probation. So if you're an addict and you're in the prison, they'll let you off on federal probation, but you have to live, guess where? In the worst part of Baltimore. And I remember talking to his, because at that point I had like 5, 6 years, or 3, 4, 5, 6 years clean or something. I remember talking to her, and I am in the field. I'm even a member of the county council's drug policy, council, but I'm doing stuff, and she's just like, no, he's here. And I'm just like, can he just come to a halfway, like in a nice part of town where he's not like looking at heroin every single day? Like he lost his finger from, I remember before we got raided, his finger was black because he hit an artery. And he was just like, man, my servers are down in Iran. And I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck that means, but like, yo, you need to go to a hospital. And he's just like, no, man. And then like our door got kicked in. It was a body warrant for him only. They found guns, drugs, they found, paraphernalia, money. They just left it. And I remember hearing the guy talk to the other Secret Service guy. He was like, yeah, we're just going to forward, we took pictures. We're just going to forward this to the DEA and the ATF and stuff. But yeah, well, how was your weekend? Like they're just talking like, and I
Hold on,
remember,
hold on. How did he die? Who poisoned him?
I don't know, man.
What does that
I
even
don't know.
mean? He got out of jail, and what happened?
Yeah, he was like a carpenter. He got like a union job, and one day after his paycheck, he got paid on like a Friday. He went to like a drive-through, and the next day he was found dead with no fentanyl, no,
That's
you
fucking
know, and,
crazy.
and so because his dad lives, 4 hours away, Baltimore City just looked at it with his record. He's a federal
Right.
uh, computer hacker living on probation, federal probation, and he died. And they were about to just like not even do a autopsy. They're just like, and his dad paid for one, and they found a certain type of poison or
Somebody
something
wanted him
that we
dead.
don't know.
Right.
Yeah, so we don't know, but like he was co-defendants with Gorilla Black and David Schruden out of the Netherlands, and there was this. I wanted to write a book on it. Like me and him were talking again. He got released, and it was just I was like, look, you have a story, man, because he was 2 years clean at that point when he got out. So he was using in jail, but he had 2 years clean before he was released off opiates, and like he saw how I changed my life, and we were like we're getting really close, and I wanted to like I even told him reach out to Vice or something. Like your story is badass. Like if you type in your name, like you know, because I even saw Gorilla Black talking about it on like Vlad or something, and I was like,
Right.
oh shit, I was getting high with one of his co-defendants, but that was like a really, you should have think mind opening experience. But when you said like, do I have any stories? That one was obviously like really big for me, but I think another one was where I had to get blood work because so what happened to him? Before I go on to another story about a completely different topic, uh, you said like what happened to him or me? Should I
Yeah.
finish?
I want to know before we get to another random thing. Christopher was poisoned, gone. How did you fucking did you get was the incarceration the end of your drug dealing career? Like how did your
Yeah.
drug dealing end?
Well, in about 2014, I got arrested in my. I met
Actually,
this girl.
Nick, what do you think's better? Do you think we need to hear this other story you were about to tell, or do we want to get to the end of your addiction first?
Well, let's go. Yeah, I'll tell the story. Well, let's go to my addiction first. Let me just finish the story, the never-ending story that's still continuing.
Well, I mean, you can
Um,
always come back. I mean, this is awesome.
no, real. I mean, to sum it up, I mean, the last year of using, was just it is what it is, and I hated it. I got arrested. But before I got arrested for stealing a hat in 7-Eleven. So I make memes about the girl in detox all the time. Rehab romances is a big theme because it was part of my story. Like I met this girl in rehab and she was going to be clean and I was going to be clean
It's
and
the best. It's the
it
best.
was going to work out and
Amazing.
turned out like she was a DEA informant. Yeah,
So,
man. Like she was a
was she a plant in the detox?
No, no, no. She just was like, I think the DEA and the Drug Task Force, like they have all these people who have like, that they can just call upon at any point. But it wasn't, she was there for herself,
Right.
for
She had
her
gotten strung
addiction.
out doing her work,
Yeah,
and then she had to go
yeah.
to treatment, and she fell in love with you in treatment. It's
Well,
beautiful.
the funny thing is, it happened after, she met me. So when I checked into rehab for a stolen hat, because I had to do this for
What kind of hat do
pretrial.
you steal from 7-Eleven?
So it was a Redskins hat. So I was really high on Xanax with this Colombian chick I used to date, and we were so fucked up we didn't even notice that there was a cop in the 7-Eleven. It was not one of those things where like I'm going to steal this hat to like sell it because I'm a junkie. It was like, oh baby, no, you get the hat. Oh no, I'll get it. It was just, and then we walk out and the cop's just like, hey, like it's about to be Christmas. Did you literally just take that? And there was a cop. He like pulled my shirt, and I was like, he's like, look, man, it's Christmas is tomorrow. Just admit you did it. I'll write you a ticket. Show up to court. And I was like, okay. He's like, okay, what's your name? And then I gave him my name, and then like 17 cops came, and they were just like, hey Nick, who's your dealer? And they're like, and they busted her with a needle. She had a needle in her purse, and I was just like, it's mine because I'm a gentleman. And they still took her to
Nice.
jail. So he told me if I just admitted that that I stole the hat, I would get a ticket. But nope, they took me to jail for 3 days. They took me, I got released on Christmas, and so now I had this stupid theft under 100 charge. So pre-trial called me and they're like, well, you can't piss dirty for morphine and benzos. I'm like, well, I can't stop.
You can't
And so
not
that
piss dirty for
Yeah,
morphine
I
and
was, and they
benzos.
were like, "Well, you need to go to treatment." And I'm like, "Nah, I put people in treatment. I don't go there. Like, there's no hope. I'm done." And that kind of planted the seed for later. So then I met that girl in rehab, dumped the Colombian, right? Because she's bad. Rest in peace. She actually passed away on my birthday when I had like 4 years clean. The Colombian girl, and it's just so sad. But so met this girl and then we got out together. Long story short, man, she got with my best friend, my
Oh,
brother, like not a using buddy, and just so much stuff happened and unfolded. But what also unfolded was like my reaction and like trying to control, manipulate the situation, using with her just to hang out with, like all these bottoms that are different from just the addiction, right? And so I got a tax return and I just bought it. I wasn't even, so for like the last year I wasn't even selling drugs anymore because my plug that I described was in the federal system. So I was just copying for myself. to use and to like impress her, if that's,
It was she
a
with your
thing.
friend at that point?
I think so. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
another guy too, and another guy too. And so like that really broke. And then my mother was working with the drug task force. Because my mom and dad were fighting over a house that was in a divorce. So sometimes I would take a vacation from the trap house I was living in and trap out of this house that my dad wasn't in, my mom wasn't in, but it was being fought. So my mom told the neighbors, "Hey, if my son's ever there, and you see cars, like take pictures of license plates." And
Wow.
she was working for the drug task force, but luckily, like at that point, I wasn't selling drugs, so there was nothing like, okay, they'll get pictures of me using or friends I'm using with, right?
Did you feel betrayed by your mom?
Yes, yes, yes. So the betrayal was a big thing. So that was the thing that got me to where I am. Without that betrayal, man, that was incredible. That was the best thing that could ever happen to me because my whole world flipped, and and it was
When
just like, I'm gonna get.
your mom is work when you say she was working with the drug task force, were they paying her? Was she doing it because she wanted to save your life? What was the
Yep.
story?
Yeah, she was just like, I'm so sick of this bullshit, and
You were at home. How often were you at home?
maybe once every couple months I'd go there.
And she was just
But the
like, "What can I do to help Nick not be
yeah,
this guy? I need my
right,
Nicky back," kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She wanted the good old days where I was reading Harry Potter,
Yeah,
like
and
a
Shia LaBeouf's classic Holes. Yes.
yeah. So it was out of love, and me and my mom are cool, and that all the relationships were, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
So wait, hold on. So you get busted in that situation?
No, no. So there was no consequence of an informant or a informant for the drug task force. You know, there was no consequence of that. I got arrested because I bought a bunch of drugs and was going into psychosis. I left my house and I passed out in my neighbor's yard. And I posted sometimes on my anniversaries, like the actual discovery from the arrest. It was like a quarter ounce of heroin and all 4 different pills. And it was just in my pocket. I was just passed out in my neighbor's yard, and I had a screwdriver. I don't know why. I'm not a violent guy, and I had nothing. I maybe I can, take apart a skateboard. That's about it with a screwdriver. I don't know what I was doing with that, and I had a Marilyn Monroe lighter and like $2. You know, and and yeah, so they took me to jail, and there was like 13 guys in masks, and they were like, "Okay, we got you now. Tell us who your dealer is and all this stuff." And me, even I was like half asleep and possibly like just like close to the brink of death. I was like, I'm not telling you anything, but I'll tell you this: my plug's already in prison. They were like, well, so I was trying to be like, I don't have a plug. Like he's already in prison, basically. Like you. And they're like, well, where did the 10 grams come from? And I was like, must have fell out the sky. In my head, I was like, well, I'm white. It's my first charge.
I'm
What's
slick.
the
I'm
what's
handsome.
the
What are they? I'm a
yeah
drummer. What are they going to do to me?
what's the worst that's going to happen? And I went to jail, and I had like 6 felony charges and like 9 charges total. Apparently, if you have a pill bottle and you remove the label,
Yeah.
that's a felony. Like if you anyway, just be safe out there, kids. That's a felony in itself. And then 4 intense prescriptions.
Well, what's
Anyway,
worse, to get busted with a pill bottle with someone else's name on it, or with a blank label?
but it was my name because I was going to this dirty doctor. So at least I had like my
So
name
would
on
you,
it.
if you were going to give somebody advice out there who has a pill bottle with somebody else's name on it, do you advise them to keep the other person's name on it, or just to take the label off?
I would say just put it in a plastic bag, you sketchy person,
All right,
you
good.
hot boy.
Okay, get back to where you were. I'm sorry. I don't want
No,
to
no,
distract you.
no, it was so I mean, because it was my first serious charge other than the stolen hat. I was able to get on pretrial again. But I had all these charges now, and so I kept using until I had a warrant, and I wanted to end my life. I was like, what's the point? I'm going to go to prison for a long time because they weren't The prosecutor's husband was actually a police officer, chasing me down for a few years. And there's all these other investigations and stuff that happened the years before. But it was basically like I just put that person to rest, like mentally before. Like I lost the desire to use before my clean date, if that makes sense. Like I hated it.
Explain that a little bit more.
Well, I couldn't stop. I knew it. I couldn't not go to re-up. I could not escape this cycle that I wanted to escape.
You needed to be separated from the substance.
Right. And then that's what I got. So, I got a year. So I went to jail eventually for a year, and I went through drug court, which I make memes about, which is part of my story. And yeah, man, so that started it off. I was in a sober house for a year after jail. I was in so the same stuff. I just took all the suggestions, did everything they told me to do. And I already had like a network to kind of go to because I was in and out of the rooms for so long. So I knew where the recovery was.
You
I
liked
just couldn't.
Did it come naturally to you when you got sober?
Yeah, even in jail where people were like talking about like what they're going to do when they get out. And I was traumatized, like thinking about the people, or especially, and I had this anger of like, I'll show everyone, because I was the dude that could never get clean. I was the dude that, all the other junkies were like, well, at least we're not like Nick. And they just like shoot up in their neck. I was that guy and proud for a while. But I hated it, right? It was a false
Hold up.
synthetic.
You said you were a terrible phlebotomist, but you were hitting the neck?
Well, yeah, but, I didn't have like a lab coat or anything, and
how were you at hitting the neck?
Well, I'll say this, that there's nothing more humbling than like looking into a mirror and making Jim Carrey faces, all right, to find a fucking vein, You got to make faces like Jim Carrey smoking crack. And
then it pops up, and then because you ran out of your other veins. I never hit the neck either. I'm not nearly as real a one as you are. I mean, I like to pretend I am. I have this big podcast and stuff, and I missed a lot of veins, and I was a horrible phlebotomist. But I never had anything up the butt, and I never hit the neck. So maybe I have to turn in my real one credential. Maybe I'm not a real one.
Maybe it's just a not yet,
It's not happening. I'm done. I have 2 children. I have a house. I'm not fucking. I don't need to hit the neck. I don't need 10 fucking grams up my butt. I'm good.
Yeah. But how did you get to that? It's the same thing.
Absolutely.
You were retired, but I was proud of like the career, in a sense.
Me
so
too.
I could put it to rest.
Me too. I was real enough for myself, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I had that, like, because we could only get self-esteem a few ways of using during the using. We had to psychologically like cling to some personality because we hated ourselves, right?
Sure.
So I was able to cling to that archetype, right?
Yeah.
So luckily, so then I just the rest is history, man. I went back to school. I even interned at the Library of Congress for a little bit. I had a federal badge with like, I was a research assistant for PhDs from England, funny enough. And, I visited them.
You love England.
Yeah, I do. I
like
love
England too. Yeah. I never been there, but I love the culture. I need to go. Fucking, you got sober with 12-step?
Yep.
And
Narcotics Anonymous.
Nice.
Anonymous.
Nice. What do you think about all the people that hate on NA?
It's
funny,
hilarious.
Right? It's hilarious.
And it is. It's so true. I mean, luckily in the DC area, NA is amazing. There's a lot of young people. There's a lot of decades and decades clean.
Same with New York. New York's got a really strong NA program. I didn't do the steps in NA. Like I relapsed and I got disinterested, and I wound up having to circle back to AA because I'd never done it before, and I just needed a blueprint without any distractions. You know what I mean? I barely drank, but I just needed that fucking blueprint. You know what I mean? I loved NA in New York. First NA meeting I went to, it was like a fucking, like I felt like I was in a movie. It was like candles and members of very famous bands. It was like fucking crazy. Hot, very beautiful women. It was weird. It was very unexpected.
Yeah.
But dude, did you ever relapse after that?
Well, no.
After prison, never happened.
Nope.
Did you use in prison at all?
No, something about like there was subs and something about giving, like my dad would send me $10 a week in commissary and you're allowed like 65, and something about giving a whole, $65 for a quarter of a Suboxone was just like, you don't know who the fuck I am. That's like, how dare you?
Right.
Like, so
Disrespect.
that's how I would psychologically like fight the urges in the people in a way of like, that's just, plus like I didn't have it like that. I'm like,
No,
Dad, we're making a cake. I remember calling him. I'm like, Dad, I need 20 this week. We're making a cake. All right. It's my Sally's birthday. All right. We're living it up, please. And he's like, oh, fuck. Okay. $20. We're making a cake.
and you made the cake.
We made the cake.
What kind of cake?
We mashed like a bunch of
Xanax
different.
into a mold and
No, different honey buns and M&Ms, and and you press it together and you make like this horrible, sugary cake.
And how was prison for you? I mean, it sounds delicious. I'm pro any kind of
Well,
crafting
because
desserts in prison. I
well,
think that
it
sounds
was
beautiful.
it was county jail, so it wasn't prison.
It's bad enough.
County jail is even worse than prison because it's more boring. Is what I've heard. So, but all the people that done prison time, they're gonna be like, "Fuck, he's swelling. He didn't do no bid in prison, but it was county jail, so it was boring. Safe. I never felt like scared or you know.
Did you start putting together an idea in your head of what your life was going to be when you were
Yep,
in there?
yep. I knew it. I knew it. I had this inspiration. I had this like purpose, and that was. It takes like a lot of pain to chisel that, doesn't it? That direction to and I knew what I was going to do, and I felt so good about myself because like I felt like I deserve to be here. This is a great thing, but this is not me. Like at the same time, there's a lot of people there that was them. Like this was like, yeah, I'm chilling out. I'm doing a fresh 12, and then yeah, woo woo woo. They'd always say next year, woo woo woo. I'm gonna go out, and then I learned all the DC slang like
Wait, what's
ja
the woo
like.
woo woo? Is woo woo woo
I don't
like
know.
DC for yada yada yada? It's like
Yeah,
yada
and
yada
then
yada. Bada
another.
bialy.
Yeah, and then another one was like jaw like. So yeah, I'm about to jaw like go over and do this laundry real quick, and that was
Ja
another one.
like.
Jaw like, that's a total DC thing. Jaw like, yo. So I was with this dude. Jaw like, he was annoying me. Jaw like, they just jaw like, and I was just like, that's not me. Like
It's like
I'm not
it's
a
like
jaw like guy.
it's like
I'm
wait a
like a
sec.
jaw.
Ja like
Yeah,
is really Ja like is a really annoying character, by the way. I just imagine there's a guy named Ja like, and he's really annoying. Ja like annoys everybody. Ja like it's constantly like complaining.
well,
Ja like wants to go
well,
down
well,
to commissary. What?
yeah, yeah. Well, another thing is I actually during the time there, I actually half the pod was like Spanish, so they were like non-violent, like just dudes who drink and drive. They might have been documented, they might have not, but like not criminals or violent people. So I hung out with them because two reasons. They played soccer, so I'd play soccer with them, and that's like the universal language is soccer. Like they don't know English, I don't know Spanish, but that's just a unifying thing, kicking the ball around, right?
And you're into it.
And
If you're into it, they
yeah,
respect your passion for it and your
yep,
love of
and
the
all
game.
yeah, also, all the other white and black dudes, they'd be watching ESPN all day and like they'd want to watch people talk about sports, which was just ridiculous to me. Like, and then, but the Spanish dudes, they watched like these shows where the women were like really beautiful and like
The
scantily
novellas.
dressed. Yeah, and like the news channel, like all of a sudden a clown would be popping out, and
Yeah, yeah.
he'd be like slapping a girls in like this really short dress, like
Yeah, yeah.
and with like a clown, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is fucking hilarious, and I would just chill with them because of those two reasons.
And you didn't catch
And
heat? You didn't catch heat for like race trading or whatever? In county, it wasn't a thing.
no,
Were there any jaw like Jews in this prison, in this county jail? No,
no, but I think my lawyer was.
of course. Of course he was. So, all right. Well, this is a lot of good stuff, man. Fucking, and do you want to talk about what your vision was and how you carried it out, or do we not want that to enter this this tableau of one of the world's most successful junkie meme pages.
I no, that was pretty much it. So well, I can tell you that real quickly. Like I started making memes when I got a smartphone, and then somebody showed me Dank Recovery. I know you've had Tim on the show, and shout out to
Sure.
Tim and Seth from Bill Wilson and Ryan McGill from Relapse Row, Shirtless Gatorade, and all them like big influences. And yeah, so I just started making memes, and then getting cyberbullied, and then I loved it. It
Who
was the greatest
cyberbullied
thing.
you? Dank?
Everyone, like
The crew? What'd they do?
the all of them, and I no, but
That
I'm just making a joke, but they were really good. I felt like they were friends of mine online.
they're awesome.
um
Yeah.
yeah, the really funny, and some of the funniest people I've ever connected with. And just I started making memes because I wanted to like make them laugh or make my friends laugh, and then it just I was going to make my own page, and then um
Who's
you
the
know
black sheep in the world of junkie meme makers? Is it like sarcastic AA book, or is it Bill Wilson is brutal, right? Bill Wilson though, he's pretty
yeah,
brutal, I think.
they're all pretty brutal in their own way. They all have their own
Their own
style.
style. It's like
Yeah.
Seven
But
Samurais or something. What are you
But
gonna
I'd
say?
say Tim though is a sweetheart.
Oh yeah.
He's a real approachable guy, humble. You could tell he's working on something, like, and they're all like that. Like, I've had conversations with them about life and recovery, and also like a lot of people that you would never think you would even connect with, or celebrities like requesting to follow me and thanking me like, "Hey, thanks for my accept." And you're just like, "Holy shit, you have like 2 million followers, and I've known
Like
your
who?
I won't say, but you
Come
know how it
on.
is."
Courtney Love?
Yeah, well, I've spoken to her before too. She
I
kind of
annoyed
ghosted me.
Courtney Love
I
so
annoyed her
much.
too. Yeah,
I
Courtney
annoyed
Love.
her. Yeah, I treated her like some girl on Tinder that I needed to come over the first night I spoke to her, and she never spoke to me again. And like, now I'm like, I'm like, what am I gonna do? Nick? What am I gonna do with that? How do I get back to Courtney Love? What are we gonna do? See, Tim
Yeah, well,
is
if
humble enough not to annoy Courtney Love. Tim's not
yeah,
stupid like you and me. He
yeah,
doesn't do that.
yeah. See, but my friend, and shout out to Jason from Just Say Maybe, and Brian from Straight Pepper Diet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was funny because they'll make memes with them if they know they're following them, and I'm like, oh, that's scary. They'll like, and Courtney Love sometimes would share it. She's up and down though, man. Don't feel bad. Like she ghosted me too. So
No, I feel bad because I was talking to her, and I literally like I didn't get creepy, like send me a picture or something, but it felt like that. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh my God, Courtney Love's talking to me. And for me, like she would be like, I don't need to be Courtney Love's friend. I just
right.
know she would be fucking killer on the show. Like it would just be
Oh, for
like
sure.
it would be wall to wall. And I had like the drummer from Hole, Patty Schemmel on Dopey, and I've had some people adjacent to these guys on, but like it would just be so bananas, you know what I mean? It would just be like, and the show is like my dream come true, and it's like when I get to go to those kinds of places, it's just exciting for me. You know who I just talked to? I talked
Yeah.
to you were talking about Burroughs and Kerouac and Ginsberg. I just spoke to Jerry Garcia's wife, Mountain Girl, who had she had Jerry Garcia's kids, but she also had Ken Kesey's kids, who wrote One Floor Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And like she's like the story she told, it's like straight out of like the fantasy. You know what I mean? Like the fantasy that we started talking about in the
Right.
first place. But I
Right.
do feel badly about Courtney Love. That's like an amend. Like that. It's like I should stop. I should stop bothering her as a living amend, but I don't,
Yeah.
because I
Well,
don't
well,
practice the principles in all my affairs.
right. Well, the exact nature was probably fear that she would reject you by not answering. So you just kept trying to. Would that be the exact nature of your wrong?
My wrong was, I don't know. Help me out here. Like if I went to, what did you do? What did you do that got her to ghost you think? Or you just talked to
Well,
her?
yeah, yeah. Just by talking to her was offensive enough. No, I'm just kidding. Like we'd have good conversations, and then at some point she was probably like, you know, just like probably got lost. I mean, she probably has a publicist and like many people on her page. Maybe she goes through phases of actually like responding to people and like liking memes. What if she was just like, yo, fuck these memes. Like I'm in Paris right now, like working on my clothing line. Like I can't just talk to like Nikki B from DC
It's
and like
awesome.
validate him,
It's
for like,
awesome. It's awesome.
you
It's
know.
it's all it's awesome. I love that.
Well, yeah, you've talked to so many people, but yeah, what would be for you the like you mentioned, like because you're a big counterculture, fan and making your way into the counterculture for now, current counterculture. But I think real quick, the recovery and total abstinence is the new counterculture, and I feel so unique and different for that, from society currently, where back then they felt so like they were revolutionizing, everything. I think we're revolutionizing that by being total counterculture. But who is your like
Well, first of
hero
all, hold
that
on.
you?
I appreciate your grandiosity, first of all. And secondly, I feel the same way, but it's all about like the fact it's that misery that we went to that miserable, horrible place. And it's like I think that if we could have survived in that timeline, we'd still be in that timeline, but we couldn't survive it. So to be on the other side of it, it's like the counterculture guys are too fucking wiped out to
Yeah,
participate, but we're not wiped out, so we can participate. I mean, like I don't know, like there's so many dreams, like dream guests, like Courtney Love is a crazy dream guest, just because I would want to hear the stories. My dream guest is so annoying. My dream guest is fucking Bob Dylan. I don't know why. Like he's never been sober. He's never been, he's never admitted. He said he was an addict. He said he was on heroin in the late 60s. And I just want to sit down with him. I want to talk to him. I don't have any real reason except I really want to watch him think. I want to hear him talk to me. And I want to be like, come on, Bob. Tell me what really happened. Because he's
yeah. Well,
always like a dick to
yeah.
the interviewer.
Well, if you do talk to him, be like, remember when you said like you sold your soul, and it was like this
Yes.
clip? Was that just a metaphorical thing, or like did you really like?
That's the top of my list. That's the
Because
most
like you, okay,
he's
okay, we're on the
he
same. All right,
yeah,
I
that
see.
that fucking the 60 Minutes interview with
Yeah,
Ed Bradley, I think. Was
yeah,
that the guy?
yeah, yeah.
And
He
he
was
said he
like,
sold his soul to the devil, and he talked about the commander in chief, the great commander,
yeah,
which was the devil.
yeah, yeah. It's like he stayed the most mysterious man, that persona he has, by he didn't help that persona by saying what he just said, so yeah, that would be my first question. Just say that off the jump, like the first question he sits down and agrees to this, just be like, yo, you really sell your soul, and watch him like take his headphones off and say, fuck this guy.
No, yeah, you have to like massage him through the interview. He's funny though. I mean, if you watch interviews with him, he does funny shit. Like he fucks with people all the time. I think you'd have to like lull him into a feeling safe
I,
place. It
yeah,
would be
I would have
hard.
been like, yo, Bob, I went to that crossroads, and like I didn't see no devil, but there's this dude. He started asking me to bum him cigarettes. Was that the same guy you encountered? I would have just like try to like, where do I go? Where is this on the GPS? Like, do I need a child sacrifice, or like, is there? I want to be like you, buddy.
It's a very, very, very like it's never gonna happen. I'll never get to talk to Bob Dylan. I don't know who would you want to hear on Dopey more than anybody?
I always joke with you. I'm like, I want to make it on Dopey. I'll know I made it if I'm on Dopey, but
Well, you're basically on Dopey right now. I don't know what
I
I'm gonna
know,
do with it, but you're
I
on.
know.
I mean, that's happened. So like, what who do you want to see on Dopey besides you self-centered, fucking self-seeking meme maker? Who?
Um, I think Courtney Love is definitely up there. Somebody who's been active, like it's everything in one. I mean, somebody who's dated or married to the biggest rock star possibly of all time, who saw two genres of music collide, like the heavy metal '80s. She lived in LA. She went to England. Like she lived even before getting with Kurt. Like she had this rock star life as just like a fan. It's just I think she encompasses everything. She's an artist. Uh, plus she's like hilarious.
Yeah, she's funny
But
as hell. She's always a
every,
freak on Howard.
Well, everybody that you've brought on is kind of eye opening, because if I see that they're on dopey, then I'm like, oh my God, they understand, this thing. So I wouldn't know that for a lot of them until they are on your show.
Nice.
Um, so all the persons that are like on are already somebody I'd imagine being there. But we got decades. That's the thing. Like, we got decades of, we're going to be here for a while. We're taking care of ourselves, and like, imagine what's going to be like in 10 years, and never sell yourself short. You didn't imagine this when you got sober and stayed sober. You didn't, like, you did it for
No.
purely like you were done, and you connected with some people. But like, this is like my higher power working in my life, like showing me that the world is so, like, I don't know what can happen. And if I just keep doing the right thing, like, the coolest things will happen. And this is certainly one of them. Right. And more will be revealed. Right. So where are you going to be in 10 years, man? You might have, like a bigger platform, more employees,
More employees.
definitely.
How about like one employee? That would be a bigger platform. But I agree. More will be revealed. I'm having fun. I know you're having fun. And I loved hearing your story, man. And I'll definitely have you back. I love that.
Yeah. And can I just say one more, like, really funny story real
Please.
quick?
Sure.
All right. So, and thank you so much for having me. So there was this time where I was going to this doctor for, the pills, and I had a girlfriend at the time or something, but I couldn't get my shit up. I couldn't perform. And I remember I'm like at the peak, strung out, like 2012, gray, 150 pounds. I'm 6'1". And I'm just like, my shit doesn't work. And she's like, okay, like, let's do some blood work, and we'll get you some Viagra or Cialis, both, see which one's better. And then I came back a couple weeks later, and then she went over the blood work, and she was like, okay, Nick, I know why. Okay, so right now, so all women have testosterone, like, is around 30, and men are supposed to have like 300 to 1,000, whatever, testosterone in their blood. You currently have 30. Like, the most, like, she was like, basically, you're a woman, and that's why.
Yes.
And I remember just being like, oh, that's so progressive. Like, I'm like transhumanist, or I'm like, so
You're
trending right now.
transhumanist. Absolutely.
I'm literally like, but of course. And then she just goes, I'm like, so what do we do? It was never like, she never looked at me and was like, it's time to get off the junk.
Right.
Like, that wasn't even a question. She just goes, you want testosterone injections? I
What'd you
said,
say?
fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. And so I came back another week, and then she injected this testosterone in my butt cheek. My feet blew up like fucking, like, huge. Like I couldn't even put my pajama slippers on, because that's
Oy.
all I was wearing. And I could press down on it and let it go, and it would stay indented. And I'm just like, fuck this. But that's just a really story, because it's like a funny.
So how did the
Um,
testosterone work out?
oh, I'm normal now.
No, but I mean then, whereas like, were you all of a sudden performing at a higher level? Did you get ripped and were you fucking everybody and what was
No,
happening?
no, I had that reaction, and I don't, I
That was
never
it.
did it
That was
again.
it. That was it. You just
But,
feet blew up and you're like, I can't take testosterone.
yeah, but the sad part is, like, I didn't even say, like, well, now I should get clean. It wasn't. It was just like, oh, well, I'm fucked. I'm basically a female right now. No wonder I'm so emotional. Okay, and crying all the time.
Yeah, I wonder what my testosterone is right now. I'm so fucking emotional all the time. All the time. What was I gonna say? Fucking but you got clean when you got clean, you know what I mean? It's a miracle you made it out, it's a miracle that you get to do what you're doing, and I think it's great, you know what I mean? Like it's like it's once in a while. I think we have similar stories. Like, I obviously didn't do the same shit you did, you didn't do the same shit I did, but it's miraculous that we get to sit here. How much clean time you got?
So this September will be 7 years. September 7th will be 7 years.
Yeah, me in August. I'll have 7 in August. So it's very
Oh
similar.
shit, man! I'm gonna come up to New York at the end of the summer, so we should get dinner or something.
Dude, DopeyCon 3 is October 1st.
Okay, I'll definitely be there for that.
All right, good. All right, awesome. Nikki B
All right.
from Washington, D.C. and Dark Side of the Spoon. Where do they find you?
Click on Instagram, on Facebook, L Dark Side of the Spoon 2.0.
What's L?
L like the in Spanish because
Yeah.
I had to remake it.
Right.
And then Instagram, it's DRK Side Spoon 2.0. DRK for
All right.
dark.
Thank you, Nikki.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a dream come true, and I'll see you guys around. Love
Right
you
on, man.
all.
Love you too, man. Thank you.
No, baby, I'm face down on the floor. No, baby, please sir, can I have some more? No, baby, said no, baby.